David, whenever you are ready, but you are muted right now.
Okay, thanks. I am calling to order this hearing of the 4-Point Channel Landmark District Commission at 6:05 actually on what is it? Thursday, January 23rd. And present are Commissioners Umfanor and Rhodey and myself, Baraducci. So today the commission will be holding a public hearing to review applications in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, including the March 29, 2023 amendment, extending the suspension of these provisions until March 31, 2025. We're conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the 4-Point Channel Landmark District Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. This hearing is being recorded. All further conversations between commissioners should be audible to the public in attendance until the hearing is adjourned. And then at this point, we ask if there are any media or elected officials currently on the call to raise your hand in the Zoom prompt and just identify yourself and your affiliation.
Okay, I'm not seeing anyone.
All right, and when at the point in the hearing we open it up to public comment, the members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the applications and discussions. And then again, to do so, use the prompt raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. We'll repeat these instructions when we open up public comment. All right, so the agenda is pretty light tonight, and there's one application, and it is 25.0521, and this is 259 to 267 Summer Street. And then we will vote on the acceptance of the meeting minutes, rather, from the December 12 hearing, any staff updates, and then adjournment. So if the applicant is ready, you can introduce yourself and get started.
Whoever needs to present, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. All right, Chad, you should be good to go. Does anyone else from your team need to be unmuted? Oh, John, okay.
Thanks.
Great. Well, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your screen if you so choose.
Oh, all right, there we go. I'm trying to do it earlier. My apologies.
All good. And I'm running the slides, so I have your presentation from earlier. You're welcome to share your screen as well, but otherwise just tell me next.
Perfect. Hi, commissioners. Chad Woolman from Balance Architects. I'm just going to run you pretty briefly through kind of the project for 259 to 267 Summer Street. So this is part of the new downtown residential conversion incentive program. There's the board approval as of December 12th of 2024. And we've made a lot of efforts here to minimize anything on the exterior of the building with a few exceptions. And we'll get into those as we go through the slides if you want to move to the next slide. So we'll start with just some context photos. For those of you who don't know the building, these are just some photos taken from the corner of Summer and Melcher. And then the image on the right is the sidewalk along Summer Street. So the building is in excellent condition. So we're not touching anything on the two sides you're seeing here. Next image. And again, image on the left is kind of looking up, showing the condition of the existing building is fantastic. And then actually the image on the right here, and we'll jump to this in a couple slides. You'll see a tall stack of louvers here that we're going to be changing out to be more what they were like historically. Next slide. And then this should key everybody in exactly which building this is. So this has the Boston Work Company Industrial Real Estate sign, which we'll be maintaining. And ownership is looking into actually changing the lighting out to LED to reduce the power consumption of this, because it's a pretty power hungry sign at the moment. But they'll be able to keep the same look but reduce the energy consumption.
Note that that anything to do with the sign is not within the scope of the work of the application for tonight. They'll come back for the sign at another hearing.
Next slide. And then here's some images from the roof. So these are important. You've got the head house here, existing head house on the right, and then just some mechanical equipment behind it. The new mechanical equipment will be going in the same place. So again, trying to minimize any impact there. And then we've already gone through the process of mock-ups on the roof to ensure that those aren't visible. Next slide. Perfect. So in this image, this is a good one to show kind of what we are actually doing on the exterior. So on the bottom of the building, there's a series of 6 windows right at grade that have either been infilled with plywood or infilled with mechanical louvers. So we're looking to take those, if possible, remove the infill and just replace the glazing, but also potentially replacing the window if that's not possible. So there's the 6 on the bottom band there. On the right side of this rear elevation, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 7 windows from the 2nd floor up to the 8th floor that are going to be, those are currently infilled. Those infill will be taken out. We'll be replacing it with, again, windows that look more like the historic windows, which are the 2/1 windows there. And the far right image, you'll see this is the floors 2 through 8 again. Juliet balcony doors with transoms going in. And you'll see the historic image here, I think, on the next slide. Perfect. So this image in the middle, highlighted here in blue, is a historic image where you can kind of see that there's some doorways happening on the 1st and 2nd floor. I believe those go higher up with either curtains or something else there. So those have been infilled with mechanical louvers, as you're seeing on the right. So from floors 2 to 8, we'd be removing those mechanical louvers in and putting in a double in-swing door with a transom above. We're currently working through the exact details on what that door will look like. But we're trying to look at doors in the area that are roughly half glass and then paneling along the bottom. Next slide. And then again here, just focusing on floors 2 through 8, we have those openings we're punching back out that are there. They still have the existing brick arches above them. And then at the bottom here, reopening again, an infilled opening with storefront to match the color and aesthetic of the rest of what we're seeing here. Next slide. And this just highlights again these louvers I discussed, louvers and plywood infills I discussed earlier. So these are what we're looking to bring back to what they were with the glazing in those. Next slide. And then finally, we have an updated slide here just of the rooftop, because we are actually adding a small piece onto the head house for a secondary access stair to a roof deck. So that's kind of shown up here on the right. We're looking to match the existing head house material. And then we've adjusted the height a few times to make sure that gets low enough so that it doesn't become visible from the ground.
And then, sorry, Chad, just to interject. So they put mock-ups up for all of these elements, including the proposed mechanicals, where the roof deck will be, as well as this head house extension. And I reviewed it, coming up the Summer Street Bridge, walking all the way around the building, and I did not see anything from a public way. An earlier iteration of the head house expansion I did see, but they reduced it in size and now it is no longer visible. So because these elements are not visible from a public way, they are now exempt. But I just wanted to let you guys know they did a really great job in making sure it would not be visible.
Wait, Rachel, what part of the head house is the extension?
So
Just
it's
that bump?
it's just a little bump out on the
That bump there,
right-hand side. It's literally like, I've been up on the roof and it's very low. And then you can't see it as you walk around the building. And then, like I said, from the bridge, you can't see it. So they did a really good job of making them as minimal as possible.
Mhm.
All right. Sorry, Chad. Go ahead.
No, I mean that's great. Yeah, I mean that pretty much covers it for us. This is the last slide. So
David, you're muted.
On your roof work here, where's you're adding a new deck surface? Is that it?
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
is there going to be is there going to be a railing? And then I assume Rachel, you looked at that as well to
Yes,
see.
they mocked up the rail. I could not see the rail at height.
Right. All right. So if we can go back then to the beginning, and see your first alterations here. Basically it's a restoration of of what was there. You're not proposing any new openings that were historically not there. Um, and so on this, the window row to the left that are highlighted there, those are going to be uh, brand new windows. And then what is there now? Were they bricked in, or is it was it just a solid pane of glass?
So there's a slide that actually shows it here. It's going to be later in the slides, I think. Sorry, it's like slide 6 or 7, maybe. Sorry, it's 8. And I'm wrong again. It's 9. Yeah, here we go. This is that bottom row window. So 3 of them are infilled with louvers like this. And 3 of them have plywood, I believe plywood panels that are painted.
All right, so I'm talking about that long vertical row of
Oh,
windows. Yeah.
I apologize.
Okay. So this is brick infill now.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. But on the other view that I was looking at, no, was this it? Okay. Oh, geez, I don't know. I'm getting all disoriented here with the angles. Okay, so this view, um, I understand where the right-hand segment of the building is, that vertical. And then moving to the left, there's a space, and then that row of windows there. Yes, those are going to be new.
No, so these are actually these ones. So on the left elevation, the proposed rear elevation, the ones to the far right of that specific elevation are actually the ones that are filled in with brick and they're being punched
Oh,
out.
all right. So
Yep.
that's set back, in other words. Okay,
Yep.
that's where I'm getting
Yeah.
a little bit disoriented here. Okay. So you're taking the brick out and putting in the 2/2. I assume historically that's what was here, 'cause since this building has been stripped of all its
Yeah. There's
original.
actually the image that I have of the existing from 1907. I should have touched on it when we showed that image. So on the far right of that image, you can actually see
Oh
what.
yeah, I see it. I see it. Two over
Yeah,
two.
and we also looked at the plans for the building, and they had 2/2 windows in the original plans for the building.
All right. And so let's keep on this slide because I'm going to ask about this. And so these windows are going to be metal clad.
We're working with Pella right now. These are either going to be either metal or wood clad, I believe.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we would want to know that at some point. So I guess that we'll probably ask that detail be remanded to staff, but as a proviso. All right. So now in this view, what you're showing in yellow is what is shown in the historic photo to the left.
Yep.
So what is there now? And I mean, in the historic photo, what are those light grayish covers on the opening? This was a hoistway originally, right? Yes, it was. You could see the hoist.
Yeah, so you'll see, you can actually see it on the right side here too. We kind of have a similar thing happening next to it. As you go up, some of those panels actually open.
Okay, so these were like interior doors that opened
It looks
in,
like
and
they all
then
open in. Yep.
that looks like it was just a pipe that was in the middle to prevent people from falling over, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah, I mean, it actually looks almost exactly like a Juliet balcony on those first 2 floors.
Yeah, right.
Higher, yeah, it looks like a pipe just across to prevent a fall.
All right. And so you are now, so go just pan to the right there so I could see what you're proposing. All right, so you show the one louver at the bottom that does not have a yellow uh, screed over it. That
Yeah,
is,
the reasoning for that is there's actually existing transformers outside of that area.
and
So
that will be that louver that's not in yellow. That is the first floor
yeah,
over on the left historic photo.
yep.
And so All right. So you're leaving the louvers there and then going up to the second floor. What's You've got that ellipse, that's the blue ellipse that's showing both of the first and second floor. So on the second floor, what are you proposing there? You're proposing double doors like you got here on the upper left
Yep, with a transom above.
with a transom. Did that historically have a transom? I don't really.
So there's two reasons for this. One is we're trying to do something similar to what was there historically, but then at the same time we're trying to provide as much light as we can for those units inside.
Right. So is that the top of the transom, is that going to be any taller than the top of the historic door?
So it shouldn't be. This should actually match. It's a little difficult to tell in the historic image, but basically that louver infill is exactly the height of that door up to that next band of concrete. So we're talking about putting it in the exact same location.
All right, all right. And then you're keeping the existing grating, the metal grating in place?
Well, there isn't any now. Do you mean like the
Oh, there isn't, of course. It's removed, but historically there was, looks like.
Yeah, so we're looking at putting new ones there, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Um, all right. I guess I'm wondering about like why are you doing, since you're looking to say get more light in there, looks like the historic, whatever was there historically had windows top and bottom. And I'm just wondering why you don't do that in this one as well, in the new windows or the new doors, whatever. You see what I'm saying?
Sorry, had windows top and bottom. I don't know if
Well, it
I
had glass, had glazing.
Yeah, so this is kind of where we went back and forth a little bit on these doors. Originally, we were looking at doing something that was full glass, but based on kind of what's in the area for doors that have been replaced, they're doing the half panel with the glazing above.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess I wouldn't look at it necessarily having to see what's nearby. I mean, because you've got the historic photo right here that shows you what it was. It wasn't necessarily a door to walk out and be used like a door. It was just you know what I mean? So I don't know why we wouldn't try
Ed,
to,
are you reading in that second floor, if you can zoom into the photograph with the blue circle?
yeah.
Are you reading that as, I see, okay. So what you're depicting here is that there's a ledge, there's a grill, there is some material of opaque surface that is the bottom of that double doors. Is that how you're reading that?
Yeah,
Not reading that as a full glazed panel from top to bottom, correct?
correct. It looks like there's a solid panel behind that guardrail there.
In the historic photo.
In the
Yeah,
historic
yeah,
photo.
she zoomed in a little. You can see it pretty good right there.
All right. So in the new door that you're going to propose, where is the bottom of your new door in this historic photo? Is it at the top of the grates or is it the top of
Oh
this?
no, it's at the bottom. It's right at the
If you have a
basically at the
cursor,
bottom of
use the
grate.
cursor
This
so I could.
bottom of this door would have been, yeah.
All right,
Chad, I think you should be able to draw.
Oh,
but just
okay.
as long as I see your cursor, if you can just point, just because I want to make sure that we're doing
This
this.
is my cursor, David.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Chad
There
can
you
draw.
go. Okay, so
So
that red
that would be the bottom.
would be the bottom of your new door.
Yep. Which is the
Ah,
bottom of the louver based on the existing floor inside as well.
Okay. So these were jacks. They were never intended to be doors, or at least they never were doors originally. They looked like they were windows.
They're either windows or Juliet balconies. It's difficult to tell if those actually open in or not. Our guess was that it opens in since it looks like a bunch of these are operable up above. You could see some open.
Right. I guess for me, somehow the first two floors look totally different than the upper floors. I don't think that they were intended. Yeah, what's happening on floors 3 through 8, I don't think is historically what was going on floors 1 and 2. I think maybe the rooms that were in that space were office maybe or something different. I don't think it was necessarily intended to be part of that hoistway where goods would be, pushed into the building from them. That's
So
all
I
I'm
think,
getting.
yeah, I just want to make sure I understand correctly too. I think what you're getting at is more or less the question is, were they windows or were they doors?
Right.
You know, I would say currently we're showing them as Juliet balconies, so you know they still have, you know, no one ever really goes out there. You could open them, but you're not going out there.
Yeah, I
But
understand. I understand what a Juliet balcony is. So it's not what I'm necessarily referring to. All I'm getting at is you are putting uh, you're making a reference or putting in doorways, I should say, that were never there. Those were windows, not doors.
On the upper floors.
No, on floors
Right.
1 and 2, historically, they were not doors. Those historic, and that's historic photo, those are windows. And then floor 3 and above, yes, those were open hoistways, and it looked like the doors opened in, and then that's where goods and services were pushed into the building from there. Am I reading this wrong or what? That's what I'm seeing here.
I mean, I guess,
No.
I mean, I guess the question is, you know, if it's door, or is there opposition to it being doors versus a window?
Well, I mean, we have an
Well,
opportunity to be.
here's
Go ahead.
yeah, sorry, one point again. So floors 1 to 2, we're talking now again about having a Juliet balcony of some kind with a window or whatever you want to call it. But 3 through 8, are those also going to be Juliet balconies, or are they just going to be plain old windows?
The intent was that they would be Juliet
Kind of my
balconies
question, right?
from 2 to 8.
Each so all the way up the top of the building.
Yep.
Okay, because I don't know, David, if this gets to what you're sort of
Well, yeah,
referring
so
to, is it, you know, if there were just openings, why do we need the Juliet balconies all the way up the length of the building? That's kind of how I'm viewing it right now.
yeah,
if
so
you
from
want to just
floors,
put windows in, the windows would be fine, but you know, all the extra, you know, grill work and so forth all the way up the building.
right.
Maybe
Yeah, because I think the
much.
reason the grill work is on floors 1 and 2 is to show that the opening is as big, is as tall as the openings on floors 3 through 8, but the window that was historically there is shorter than that. So the bottom portion was just, you know, they wanted to express it. So they just put,
Yeah.
to me, it seems they just put this grill there, or the metal grating.
You just kind of block it,
To block
make
it,
it a
and
little
yes,
more visually interesting. Yeah.
and keep the same window opening all the way consistent, all the way up. So all I'm
Right.
getting at is, to me, it seems, all right. So to me, it seems floors 1 and 2 ought to have windows instead of this door that you're showing, and then floors 3 through 8. I mean, I guess that's the question. You could say, okay, you know, you could put in those double doors, but I don't know that, well, you would want them to open. So you're going to be adding a new feature to the building that was never there, and that is these grates, the railings, I'll call them, from floors 3 through 8 that don't look like they were there historically. As a matter of fact, you can see on the 90 degrees turn of that facade, you see that one hoistway window or opening that is open. And that looks like the doors had been open on the inside. And so the whole entire expression of that opening is now visible with no, I don't think there's a railing there. So yeah,
There's like a bar across
Yeah,
it.
just
It
has
looks
that.
like, but
it just
no
has the one
railing.
hefty bar, which I think was a safety thing.
Right.
Back in those days, you know, now of course wouldn't pass code, but I just think as a visual, that's the visual I would rather see rather than have those railings with the four inch on center. But then now what I guess you're getting at is that you want those doors that you're showing to be operable so you could open them up and have, you know, air come through. Is that what?
Yeah, I mean, right, it's a nice feature to be able to open those doors. I think the thought was, you know, seeing those on the lower floors, that's what they felt like, and it felt like that would fit the aesthetic of, you know, what's happening there. But
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Hey guys, Adam Burns, project proponent for Boston Pinnacle. Can I just chime in for a moment?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead if it's brief, because we will open it up eventually, but go ahead.
Sure. I'm involved in the project team, so I just wanted to
All
put in
right.
my 2 cents. And I feel like we were focused on 1 and 2 for a moment there, but I want to remind everybody that we're only talking about 2 and above. So we wouldn't be touching the first floor because that is directly next to an
Okay.
existing transformer. So for consistency's sake, I think the idea was contiguous look from 2 through 8 and keep a nod to the operable nature of what was there. If we want to do something differently than a grill feature to give homage to the bar that was across and do some sort of robust top rail and a glass feature in the lower portion of the door to give that same aesthetic, I think that's another way that we can look at this.
Yeah, I see.
So instead of deploying a bar instead of a Juliet balcony kind of grill?
No.
Is that what you're getting at?
So
No.
yeah, so still the Juliet. However, we could have a more
Okay.
substantial top rail rather than this kind of vertical grill look.
Yeah, in other words, if you just did the horizontal bar that looks like it's a fairly hefty diameter, like 4 inches or something, then those doors would not be able to be operable, because it would not be safe. So that's the big difference.
Well, I think what Adam's suggesting
Correct,
is
Sid,
there would
yeah.
be some kind of a fill
Right.
glass otherwise beneath that 4-inch diameter bar to create functionally have a Juliet balcony and have some activity, in that area.
Yeah.
Without
But
slapping
to
a grill on there.
emulate in a passive way the aesthetic that is closer aligned to the historic photo. Is that right, Adam?
That's exactly correct. And what I was trying to articulate in not as great a way as you did.
Right.
I mean, I'll just say my own comment on this is I think that any of these configurations is an improvement from the existing condition today. I'm not sure that that's the standard. I think any activity in this building is going to be very exciting, period. And it's great that it's more residential within the context of the neighborhood. And certainly seeing any kind of activation from this view corridor that the existing conditions photo on the right is, what we're looking at here, grills that are going to be inanimate no matter what. So I think just as a baseline, that's a great place to be operating from. I do like the restrained, simplistic industrial look that David is pointing to in these upper floors. There's something about the plinth of the base condition of the second floor that has characteristically a different quality than the upper floors. And so the simplification of that, I think, is a good direction to be moving in. As a general idea, I do take your point, Adam, that the bottom 2 floors are not really going to be an expression. You're going to have a standalone second floor condition because the first floor is not being touched.
Right. Yes, that's true. But at least it sets up the possibility of later, some other point in time that first floor can emulate then whatever is done on the second floor. I mean, I'm just because now I wish there was a rendering, or did you do a rendering that shows these new doors in this infill?
I think we just have an elevation of it in here. Which was, sorry, back to 5 or 6.
Is
Yeah,
there a
we just have the
reason?
elevation right
Okay,
here.
right there. That's it. So you can see what we're doing. I mean, well, it's nice what you're showing here. It's not historically what was there. You're introducing a transom window, which is now putting a whole series of horizontal expressions all the way up, which was not there before, obviously. So I'm just trying to see, is there some way to get to closer to what was there in terms of the physical opening, which looked to be a solid door with that big bar sort of separating it at the 1/3 point of the opening. I guess those doors, the original doors, were probably not glazed, it looks like. They were solid.
Yeah, I think those are solid.
some kind of metal or door. So I'm not saying you do that, but I'm just trying to think if there's another thought here whereby it's maybe it is, well, if you were to do a window, first of all, I'm going to back up. The opening that we're looking at here on the left side there, the left where the oval is and all the way up, the opening of the window that you're going to remove and put these new windows in is the width of that opening. That's going to accommodate the two doors.
Yeah, I mean, it's just under 6 feet, so it's like 5 foot something. So they're not doors you're walking through, but you can open the two of them to be roughly around 5 feet.
Yeah.
This image is a little bit deceptive, but
All right. Because one of the thoughts I had is that if it was if it wasn't a door, if it was glass infill, that maybe there could, if you want to get ventilation, where the horizontal bar is on that opening, if that became a sort of pivot point on the window the new window you're putting in, if that was could that be an awning window that pops out a little bit to get some air? And that you would therefore then keep the same look. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but
no, I think, I mean, the reality is I think actually that horizontal bar sets up a pretty good break point to set up an
yes,
operable window.
that would be the break
More in the
point.
lower ones, looking at the upper ones, it's a little easier to see.
Right. So the break point of the awning would be at where the bar is. And then the window pivots out. I'm just thinking out loud here to see if there was another way to and I guess since they were double doors, right? They originally always were double doors. Now you could see the separation in the door. So it was something that was always visible. So if you wanted to put a muntin that separates the two, so now you have like 4 segments to that opening.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me in terms of setting that up.
I mean, I'd like to hear what the other commissioners' thoughts are, because there's also, if you look at that opening, there's also another hefty horizontal at the top of the opening. So it's at the top of each opening and then 2/3 down. You see that?
And here.
That looks like that's another, because if you go one more floor up, you could see that it was another one of those pipes. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just saying, maybe suggesting something like that 2 side-by-side windows are put in there, but then the separation for the operable awning be right at where that horizontal bar is, so that you wouldn't see any further disruptions. Is that what? Yeah, what you just. So I don't know. I'd be curious. I think.
I'm just trying to visualize this.
Yeah, I know, and I
don't have
think.
the benefit
I
of
mean,
you
with
guys
what
going
David is
back and
driving
forth.
at, and David, don't, I'm not.
Yeah.
It's to try to get something that in its geometry more regularly conforms to the historic photo, and that the introduction of the transom on top of that, particularly in the elevation view, really begins to change the geometry of the way that those parts are interacting. So if you can use this as a baseline, the basic geometry of that, the division of where those bars land,
Yes.
and use that as your base condition, that establishes the rhythm.
Really, basically, super simplify the geometry.
Yes. As opposed to having the grills,
you wouldn't need the grills
and the
anymore.
panels,
the subdivision of the
yeah,
panels, the thickness of the just begins to introduce a lot of geometry that then in its repetition starts to really almost create a new facade in a lot of ways, and then the other thing I'll just say, and I don't have an answer for this, but there is a break here in that could begin to become a clue. I don't know whether it is just that you have a glass piece and that installed behind that glass are louvers that open in that allow you to effectively douse that light, It does not allow you to go out on balcony, but it does allow you to have panels that open. There's a lot of apertures in the neighborhood that have this kind of back-filled dowsing of light. And those could be full length. They could be full length of the door so that you are able to block all light or open all light inward, similar to these.
So that would be, you're saying, having something that is operable from inside that
That's right.
space, that covers the glass on the inside.
That's right. Yes.
And that
Covers
would
the glass on
look
the inside, and that would ostensibly, when it's closed, look like
this.
and
Yeah.
it would open in
Yeah.
so that you have a way of dowsing the light, of blocking the light that is not the introduction of some new apparatus. It's in fact consistent historically with what is depicted here.
Mm-hmm.
A kind of industrial kind of quality to it.
Right.
And then you can still have the bar as your division point for the glass. You can begin to emulate this. This is not an answer for what happens here, whether you carry that condition all the way down or whether you do a one-off in that final quasi-Juliet balcony, I think is something of a jump ball.
Yeah.
I mean,
To me, it almost seems to do a one-off on the second story.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, maybe on the first story, even though there's louvers there, maybe you can add the grate or the fence piece in front of the louver. You know, as a further layer of what was there originally is what I'm getting at.
or whatever's happening here, try to think about, is there's a connection. This is a historic photo, but end up doing here, carried over.
You know
But
what I'm actually.
This is about simplification, primarily simplification, and not introducing a new geometry that starts to interrupt that punch.
Yeah, and I mean, isn't one of the goals also, however, to not necessarily to douse the light, but to in fact to let more light in?
Yeah.
So while that's a departure from the way that this kind of very blank sort of surface on 2 up to 8 stories, could we think of a much simpler glass construct that does in fact allow a lot more light into the probably going to be office space? But just much sort of dumbed down or simplified down.
I mean, Raber, I
do
think
that and still be openable. Whether as kind of 2.5-foot doors on each side.
Yeah, this component, the concept of this component being added is just a notion that if you feel you want to have some kind of a door for privacy, that this might be a technique to do with. Just having glass and having simple bar.
I mean, we could, say that. To me, it seems we're maybe getting too far down in terms of trying to anticipate what the resident here would want in terms of light control.
Yeah.
I think so. In other words, the look that I think with your explanation, Raber, that the look we would be getting would be more the look on the left, where it's a whitish color that we would see. When the doors are closed on the inside, because that's closest to the glass. If you don't have those interior doors at all to control the light, but you still have glass, then you're going to see those windows will look like that. Yes, they'll be dark, even in the daylight. They'll have a darkish color, which I'm fine with. So I don't know that we need to add that extra layer of having these light control doors on the inside. To me, it seems you can do a pair of windows in each opening, and then have the operable hinge point be at the major bar that's at 1/3 of the way. And I'm assuming that I don't know code, the architects will know this more, but if you had an awning window that was only able to open, say 6 inches, couldn't go any more further than that, you would not need to have vertical bars, I'm guessing.
Correct. I think there's a couple things to it, but yeah, if we do it the right way, we don't need
you won't need it. That's what I'm guessing, because I know there's a building actually on Shawmut Avenue where that cathedral, the church was converted to residential. They have on the top floors, they have an awning window that pivots out, and there's no there's no kind of grading of any kind. So well, To
So,
me, it seems we've got everything we could want here, right?
yeah, I would like to just underscore that, and I acknowledge that Rachel flagged this at the beginning of the presentation, but the iconic sign that is at the top of this building is extraordinarily important to the district, the neighborhood, and I don't know to what extent that has been baked into the cooperation agreement and your planning approvals. But this is an element that is very, very, very important to the district identity, and we know you'll be coming back to discuss that. But the
Yeah.
detail on
Yeah.
how the neon will be managed if you were switching to an LED solution is going to be super important for us to look at, because it has a real charm to it and a real elegance to it, and
Yeah. No, there's no question the sign has to look like it did historically. And I know that there is, as a matter of fact, I think the Citgo sign was converted from neon to LED. So that would show how you could still get the design of a neon tube, but have it be LED lit. So
there's a method.
that's something we don't have to go any further with the discussion since it's not part of this application, but yeah. So all right, so let's get back here now. The bottom windows, the very bottom portion, those are going to be fixed. Those aren't going to pivot out or be awning of any kind.
I think the intent is those are fixed, yep.
And they are going to be frosted or not.
That is not the intent right now.
Okay.
No.
No, I think that's going to be great at the bottom there to have those return to glass. That'll be great.
And that will be down to a basement, is what that will be, Chad?
Yeah, there's a basement level down there that actually you can see up to where those windows are infilled. So all that light got taken away on that back side.
Got it.
Yeah. I wouldn't want a basement apartment, but that's all right.
That will be commercial.
Okay. That's all right. So before we open it up to the public, are we understanding what the thought process was on these new windows then on the side in place of the hoistways?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we could have, what I think would be great is to see a mock-up, or not a mock-up, but a rendering that shows that. If that's possible to do that.
Yeah, we have everything modeled in 3D, so we'll revise that window and.
All right, and then like I said, to look at the possibility of since floor number 2, if you're going to do this grate, I don't want to keep calling it grate, a railing, that maybe there's a railing put in front of the louver or at the bottom at the first floor too. But again, I'm not going to say that that's crucial. I want to get back to this.
I like the thought though.
It's possible. I mean, it could help, share that, making a pair of windows that have that detail versus the 2. But if we could zoom in again to the historic photo and see the corner of these windows, keep going further. Okay, right there. There we go. I think those first 2 floors had grates all the way up. You could see them.
I do see them now.
Yeah.
I don't think that that was a separate railing at all there. And you can see, especially right there on the second floor there, that goes all the way up. And that might have been put there wasn't there a bank in this building at one time? I thought that there was a bank in the building, at one point. So anyway, I'm just saying that's the detail that was there. I'm not saying that that's what you should do. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you guys are getting to a point where maybe you could consider continuing this portion of the windows, or maybe continuing an application and having them come back in February for this.
Yeah, it needs to be just studied a little bit more. So all right, let's open it up to the public and see what we've got there for feedback. All right, members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on the application and discussion. To do so, please raise your hand via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at fortpointldc@boston.gov.
Great, awesome.
Do we also too, while we're waiting, I know you sent that letter or the email from who was it?
Sarah McCann.
Sarah. And do we want to read that in, or?
I can read it in if you like.
Yeah.
That's fine. So this is a public comment from Sarah McCammon. She's a Fort Point resident who was unable to attend tonight. And it states, as you know, the Boston Wharf Co. industrial real estate sign is called out in the 2008 Boston Landmarks Commission study report as a character defining feature of our historic district. It serves as a welcoming beacon for all who enter Fort Point. During the city's office to residential conversion program review process for the building, the sign took on even greater importance as the neighborhood demanded the continued maintenance and operation, including illumination of the Boston Wharf Co. industrial real estate sign, and for that requirement to be formally obligated in the city's cooperation agreement for the applicant and their successors. It is important to relay this information and for it to be supported by the FBCLDC in the review of any changes to this building. Thank you for your consideration, Sarah McCann.
Okay.
All right. Then
We've got Steve Hollinger here. Do we go ahead, Steve?
All right, thank you. First of all, I just would on the part of the building that you were referring to, I would like to see the extension down to the ground level, even though there's a transformer there. I would like to point out that we have one bite of this apple. I really support this project. The process had been streamlined to get these kinds of housing conversions moving quickly. So there wasn't an IAG, and therefore there was kind of a consolidated public process with only one public meeting, and they also presented at an FP&A meeting. So here are my comments on the project, if you could bear with me for a few minutes. We've had a number of fits and starts in terms of that sign, and I'm not sure I understand why what happens to the sign isn't tied to the approval of this part of
Well,
the.
if I could just stop you there, Steve. It's not that it's not tied in, and it won't be. It just is not part of this application. That any change or revision that they may or may not want to do is going to have to come before us again with a separate application. So nothing can change on that sign unless we get a chance to review it.
That's fine, but can they get a full approval for the project without making any changes to, without making any attention to the sign? And I'm not talking about conversion to LED. Let me walk you through
Okay.
my
All right.
concerns. if you
Talking
don't
about
mind.
maintenance, right, Steve?
Maintenance and operation, and I'll go through this right now. And you know, the sign has gone through periods of neglect where there are letters out for quite a long time. At some points, the entire sign was out. And okay, first of all, I received assurances after the filing of an LOI on this project, assurances that maintenance and operation would be tied to the approval of the project. And Devin Quirk, Deputy Chief of BPDA, wrote me, setting up the signage for long-term preservation and appropriate operation is an important goal here. I'll connect with Dylan and John and so on. Well, the PNF came out, and the PNF only had a mention of the sign in existing conditions. It had not one photograph of the sign. All photographs, the sign had been kind of cropped out, so you couldn't even see the sign in the PNF. So I contacted, and my email chain included everyone who had registered interest about the sign during the comment period and so on. But I contacted BPTA, and the proponent, Adam and his group, filed a second PNF during that period, a second PNF that included the sign, photographs of the sign, and mentioned the existing condition, and I think might have mentioned maintenance as a goal, but didn't mention operation. I met with BPDA and the proponent and Adam separately, talked to each one separately, and received more assurances. And this was all looped in by email with everyone, including BLC and Councilor Flynn and so on. Assurances that maintenance and operation of the sign would be required as kind of a public benefit of this project. And received, and we've, I wrote letters of support for CPA grant for the conversion to LED, as did other people in our neighborhood, including FP&A. And I received an assurance from BPDA that the board memo would include those kind of requirements for maintenance and operation. Well, I got the board memo, and these were all assurances from Adams Group, by the way, not just BPDA. The board memo says the proponent shall maintain and operate the Boston Wharf Company sign, lighted sign atop the 263 letter. So despite the assurances that it would be the proponent and all successors, which everyone had agreed to, the board memo only tied the proponent, which is Adams Group, to the maintenance and operation sign. So a future owner wouldn't necessarily have any obligation to maintain and operate the sign. So again, I went back to all my email chain of everyone and complained that you can't just have the word proponent, it has to be successors. And I received from BPDA, the cooperation agreement will have language beyond proponent and will call out successors or future financial interests should the project transfer ownership. So the BPDA acknowledged that, once again, they should have language in the cooperation agreement requiring the owner and the successors to maintain the sign and operate the sign, even if it wasn't converted to LED. And all of these assurances came from BPDA and the proponent. But to date, today, I still don't have language in the cooperation agreement that does that. And I'm just appealing to the Landmarks Commission to take this sign more seriously, the same way, if you remember, with 51 Melcher Street, when they tried to suggest that the bridge at 51 Melcher be part of the project and they do restoration of it. the BLC took an interest, and that whole bridge over Melcher Street was renovated. So that's all I'm trying to say here is I'm appealing to BLC to do whatever it can and put teeth into this to get the sign maintained and operated, and the approval conditional on those things. And thanks so much for this time.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Steve.
You heard my comments earlier. I support the preservation and operation and maintenance of the sign. It sounds like there is an assurance that there will be language in the cooperation that includes a successor obligation. I'm not familiar with the board memo on this project. It's possible that somewhere else in the board memo, there is a provision that the terms are also applicable to the successors. I don't know, David, whether it's appropriate to comment on in response to any of this, but of course, our goal here is to preserve and operate that sign.
Yes, and of course we will. There's absolutely no question about the value that this sign provides the district in its identity. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if the fact that this document that Steve was referring to, this agreement, being called a cooperation agreement, is only between the city and this new owner that's going to do the conversion of this building, and therefore wondering if that's the reason that they did not use the word successor, because it's not part, it can't be, that's a word that then extends out to the future in some other unknown, separate from the owner of the building now. So I'm wondering if that might be the case. I don't know. If it is, I guess we'll just have to, we can push to have this in, but until a lawyer explains why that is not in there for legal reasons versus just desirability reasons, we would certainly like to have it be successors. So I mean, I don't know how much.
Can we?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, I was just going to say, can we revisit this when they do come back with the sort of renovation, reconstruction, protection,
I think Steve's issue is
maintenance of the thing, at that date, not tonight.
Yeah, the concern, of course, is that
these aren't tied together at this moment. We're talking about a facade and replacing windows, and not germane to that conversation.
Steve's concern is that the forking of those applications allows the work to continue on the building and to effectively ignore the sign in this scenario, and that it's a bit of a cart before horse situation. And so,
well, okay, but
my comment on this would be
it's absolutely critical. Yeah, I get that, but it just seems like we've got this other set of issues around the sign that have to be dealt with in a different forum. And I'd rather just focus right now on this narrowly defined project for the facade.
Yeah, I think it's duly noted, certainly the passion that the neighborhood and everybody, not just the neighborhood, has on this side.
Clearly, yeah.
And
Yeah,
there will be, you know, eyeballs on this from here on. And so the goal is to have it be a permanent solution to the operability of this sign, not just a one-shot deal here.
Right.
But again, like I
Well,
said,
let's bring
lawyers,
that passion to that next meeting too.
yeah,
So,
right.
and some explication of this by legal sort of
right.
counsel.
All right. And then I guess the other point that Steve made, and Steve, chime in if I'm misinterpreting this, but you wanted to know if essentially that if the owner can continue to go ahead with the conversion of the building and then not do anything to the sign.
So,
you-
sorry, everyone. I'm just going to jump in here. So right now, because it's not on our agenda, like we can't do anything to enforce the sign in any way. They can't touch, so it's protected in the district. They can't touch anything while they're doing these other restoration elements of the sign until they come to us. So they can't move it. They can't start switching out light bulbs. They can't do anything because it's protected by the standards and criteria for the district that explicitly discuss the signage. So there is a layer of protection there, but we can't really like do anything about it, unfortunately, tonight, but we can keep our eyes on it and offer our support for, you know, the continued preservation of this really important element of the district.
Yeah. No, yeah, all right. Yeah, I agree. And so we'll really just have to put it to rest right now and wait for the application to come before us, which I guess doesn't have to. They don't have to come before us with an application. They can decide now, okay, we don't want to do anything with the sign, period. So we're not going to come before you in the future either. You know, I don't know why they would do that, because it will certainly enhance the value of their building if that sign was beautiful and lit up so. But anyway, we're not gonna we shouldn't belabor that anymore. So.
Adam Burns, project proponent for Boston Pinto again. May I just say something to book out this thought? So we purchased the building because we love the sign as much as the next person. So it is absolutely in our interest and our hope to maintain that sign in perpetuity. There is an idea to convert it to LED, like the Baker Chocolate Factory sign or the Citgo sign that was referenced earlier. However, we don't have the project funding right now, which is the application for the CPA grant in order to do so. So coming before you would be predicated upon the grant of CPA funds in the future, which is what we're seeking presently. So right now, our focus is on these restoration elements in the building facade with a later opportunity to convert the sign to LED for the further restoration and further maintenance of the sign at a later point.
Okay, that's good to hear. That's reassuring. So, all right, let's put this sign then to rest at this point. And we have Tom ready. So I'm sorry for having you wait here. So go ahead.
No worries, David. Thank you, Rachel. Tom Reddy, I live on Wormwood Street, member of FP&A, the Neighborhood Association. So Adam and his team reached out to us, I want to say July of last year, with regard to applying for the conversion of this building from to participate in the office to residential conversion program that the city is still currently running. The neighborhood had advocated for Fort Point to be included into the pilot phase. We were happy to see that occurred earlier in 2024. We're thrilled to see that Adam had actually had interest with this particular property. I don't have to tell the commissioners that there's a number of buildings in Fort Point that have been successfully converted from prior uses to residential. That includes my building on Wormwood Street, buildings on Channel Center Street, buildings on Melcher Street, buildings on Farnsworth Street. That the list goes on and on and on, right? So happy that he was considering it. Happy to support his application with the Boston Planning Department, and happy to support his grant submission to the Community Preservation Association to support the sign. So I'll get into the sign in a minute, but I would ask the commissioners as they evaluate the request around windows and louvers, that they consider the other buildings that have been converted from office to residential. My building, as an example, has a number of Juliet balconies. Obviously, when it was a wool building 100 years ago, Juliet balconies wouldn't have applied, but they do today. The conversion of those louvers on the ground floor to allow light in. I just asked them to put in proper balance the difference in use from office or some other kind of storage environment to residential, what that means to support that. And if there's any question with regard to how they look from the outside, consider what the interior is, and perhaps ask Adam Burns and his team to share with you what the floor plans look like, so you'd get a better sense of what's inside and why they're either dark or lit. So I just ask you to be flexible with that, support what they're trying to do, because clearly we're in support of this conversion. With regard to the sign, I listened to with interest. We are 150% behind the need for that sign to stay on the top of that building. Obviously, it's mentioned in the study report, the 4-point channel landmarks study report. What's missing in the study report is any reference to it being lit. And that's one of the primary concerns that we continue to have, that while I understand legal agreements between the planning department at the city in City Hall and this developer have no bearing, you guys, the Landmarks Commission has no bearing on that. I will say that the study report that you base all of your decisions on is pretty limited with regard to that sign. And so as you consider the positions that you take, at minimum, I'd ask you to perhaps think about asking Adam to link this to the sign, because that's one of the perhaps prerogatives you may have. And the other would be alter the study report currently and make sure that that study report refers to that sign being lit. So again, support the conversion, support the work Adam's doing, not in support of this, I'd call it amoeba-like environment where we currently find ourselves in, where we're not sure what the results of the outcome of that sign is going to be. So thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are there any other hands or emails coming through?
I did not receive any additional emails, and there are no other raised hands.
All right. So I see what this last Tom Reddy's comments were regarding these the window openings. Yes, the building is a completely different function now, and so now what we have to decide as a commission is to how much are we willing to allow that opening to reflect now the change in use from industrial to residential, and the desire to have light and air come in, and whether that's a living room or whatever, I don't know, on the other side of that. And so I guess I'm leaning more towards a continuance here, because that, I guess, needs to be looked at. If there is a living space back there that's very important, then I think it's up to the applicant to demonstrate that to us, and to then show us options that would most closely emulate the historic character of what was there. Doesn't have to be exact, but take into consideration the divisions, the verticality of the two double doors that were there now. Even though you can't see that expressed very much, it still was part of that design. So I think, and it looks like to the idea of eliminating that horizontal transom, which is then, I think, it is just going to interrupt the flow of that of the verticality of that whole bank of windows. So is that, and then looks like the ones in the basement, looks like we're okay with that. Again, I'll just bear in mind, whoever makes the motion, if we do decide to do a continuance, that the window detailing ultimately should be remanded to staff, as far as what does that detail, what is it, whether it's metal or wood, the color, all of that has to be approved as well. So And I also want to say,
I
I
would-
don't want to hold this up. You know, I'm so wanting this to become residential. I think it's going to be fantastic. And so
Fantastic, yeah.
I don't want it to appear like we're just belaboring this. So
A continuance does
But I think,
provide
yeah,
an
that makes a lot of
opportunity
sense.
to come back with
too.
an option that does not include the Juliet balconies, that is more consistent with what we discussed before hearing Tom's comment, and then an option that perhaps Chad dovetails with what you're saying, which I think is right, that a change of use is enough of a reason to contemplate. I think what we want to look at, as David has described, in either condition is something that reflects the geometry that is represented in the historic
right.
image. Deals with,
And I'll add,
transom and so on.
they can attempt to show still a Juliet balcony, but in order to have a Juliet balcony, you have to have a barrier at the bottom. So instead of that being a metal railing, it could be a glass infill, you know, so that it still gives the visual of the verticality, but it gives you the barrier that you need. So it's something.
And if between now and the February meeting, there is an opportunity for you to work with Devin Quirk at the BPDA or other, back to us some assurance that the language that is part of your board memo will be binding to your successors and that it includes illumination. That will, I think, be a great, at a minimum, gesture for us to understand this fits into the totality of your project. We obviously share the same goal. We, of course, want you to be able to get financing to support that work through CPA. This year's CPA financing round was very competitive. So,
Right.
but to the extent
Yeah.
that can be addressed with your continuance, of course, that would be very helpful.
All right, and again, like I said, we can't make any requirements of the continuance with as it has to do with the sign because it's not part of this application. But they know now on record that what our feeling is about this, and boy, I'm going to go back and look at those guidelines because I can't believe that we would have missed stating
Illumination,
something
right?
about the
Something about the
operability.
lighting. I know.
We were so thorough in that surprises me. But anyway, I take your word for it that it wasn't mentioned. Okay, so somebody with all of that would like to make a motion?
I will make a motion that we will have a continuance. Okay, Bozzy, go ahead. And do we want to add some detail to that, Rachel?
Yeah,
Yes.
it'd be helpful to, motion a continuance with an exploration of the options that emulate the
Running
historic
two options.
character of
Yeah.
what was there, keeping in mind the existing geometry, but then also considering that this is a change of use. It sounded like you guys were open to some change, but wanted to maintain the geometry. So something that gives them something to work with would be ideal.
Mhm.
Well, and specifically the two options of, one with Juliet balconies and one without.
Yeah. And if they want to do the Juliet balcony, how do they achieve our goals to, it's all in there,
Existing geometry.
with the barrier that they need for code. And then also to, if we don't mind adding in that, well, I guess that wouldn't come until after the next appearance. I was going to say that the window detail and all of that, materials, color, all be remanded to staff, but
That'll come with the
we
provide.
can make that with the next if we approve the next thing. Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Second.
I'll second it.
All right,
Whatever
so
we said.
Commissioner Umfanor,
Yes.
Rhodey,
Votes yes.
and I vote yes. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thanks, you all. I'll send out
Thanks, guys.
tomorrow. The hearing is February 13th, I believe. It's pretty soon, so you guys don't
Yeah,
have to.
coming up, but yeah,
So we'll be in touch.
yeah,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so the next item here is the ratification of the December 12, 2024 public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve?
I motion to
So
approve.
moved.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tom, please. I'll second Tom's motion.
Yep.
And seconded. Okay, so I'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay. And
No real staff updates. We haven't heard any movement on new commissioners. I will say though, if it doesn't say lit in the guidelines or the study report, we can amend it.
You
the
can.
PLC has the power to do that. I'll talk to Joe about it, so don't
Yeah.
take my word for it right now, but we
Right.
can add something like that to the guidelines. I'm pretty sure it has to go to the BLC for a vote.
Yes, it's a big deal. It's a big
Yeah,
deal.
to amend a
Yeah,
study.
Rachel, if we can find that section that Tom Reddy was referring to and circulate that, I'd be curious to read it too. I'm kind of shocked that it wasn't.
Yeah, me too. Honestly,
wasn't
me
included
too.
somehow.
Yeah, but I'll
You
talk
know,
to
it's like,
Joe.
okay, just certain, yeah.
Yeah, the parenthetical comment, by the way, about Steve's comment on successors. When projects transfer hands, they are purchasing obligations that are tied into those memos and the development plans. There are scores of board memos and development plans that say the proponent, the proponent, the proponent, the proponent throughout the document. And do not in every instance say the proponent and their successors, the proponent and their successors.
I agree.
So this is
It's implied, in other words.
this is a bit of a phantom. I know that Steve has some anxiety about this, and that we all, of course, want what we described tonight at the meeting. But, I am not sure that the binding language of successors needs to be used in every instance in such a way that it would in any way preclude them from the obligations that are a part of the deal as passed by the BPA, by the planning agency.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's not time to panic. I mean, the signs need to stay there. So,
But I do think if
being
it
true.
isn't there, we should try to figure out how to work that in, because
Yeah.
that would usually.
Yeah. And I do also take the point that in essence, they're seeking CPA funding. I think is extremely unlikely for them to get for this purpose. Just given the competitive nature of looking at the applications this year. I understand the anxiety around, oh, we're going to get everything approved that we want for the building, and then we will separate this thing that is actually really the public benefit, for lack of a better characterization. So I think the community would have preferred that those things went as a pair. But of course, you can apply for these changes independent of the sign. So the proponent chose to fork that application. So
yeah, I think I agree. And I think, Rachel, if you're looking eventually, if we do decide to go with an amendment, I would say if you can go back and find the study report that was written for the Citgo sign, even though that did not get approved as a landmark. There was a lot of language and elaboration on the operation and animation, as we called it, of the sign. So that would give you,
some
really
template
appropriate
language to work with. Yeah.
That's
Particularly
great.
also in
What was the other-
managing the conversion if that decision is made.
Right. Yeah.
Did the proponent mention a third instance where this was sort of taken into account? He echoed the Citgo sign. He mentioned something else though. Some other sign that was.
Oh yeah, I forgot the other project or the other one he mentioned. But even the theater.
Brown Factory or something like that.
The Walter Baker chocolate lofts.
Yes.
Yes.
And also
okay.
too the all of the signage that's on the Paramount Theater, that there's a study report for that. All of that is written in, and all of that was converted to LED. So
there's a couple ways you can do it, and some ways you can do it look really cheesy, and some ways you can do it look totally fine and cool. So this may be a great example of where we finally all get to have a site tour and meet each other in person and actually look at the real LED
at night.
Rachel.
Yeah, really.
It's always
Go for a
fun.
drink or something.
They're option A to
Civil
option
like
B.
that.
Really cool. Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
Guys.
Well, thanks
we
everyone
good?
for your
We
time.
ready to-
Great seeing you guys.
Wait,
Thank
we have a
you.
motion to
Oh,
adjourn?
yes.
We gotta adjourn.
Yeah,
Can't just
motion
leave.
to adjourn. All right, second.
Yeah. By the way, David,
second.
I agree. I love David very much. I always look at this. I think, oh, that generally looks good. And then David drills in a little deeper. And then I look at the transom window and I'm like, what is that transom window doing in there?
David,
Yeah, right?
Same. I was like,
I know,
I'm feeling
exactly.
pretty good about this. And then as soon as you said transom, I was like, whoa.
Okay.
I missed the
Another
transom.
issue. The other issue is that the line weight. I'm saying line weight. The width of that frame around that transom window was a complete